Hello, I'm Matt and welcome to Badger Workshop. A few weeks ago I made this bed, but I could really use a bedside table to go with it. So it's time to get up and get into the workshop. I've got a pile of offcuts left over from the bed build. I've drawn up a quick plan that should use all these bits up. But first, a cup of tea and then we can get started. To make the main body of the cabinet, I'm going to laminate together a couple of boards, a 6x2 and a 4x2. This will make quite a narrow cabinet as I haven't got that much room in there, but also it will make it easier to plane everything down because the capacity of my planer thicknesser is 10 inches. So when the glue's dried, I can plane one surface and one edge and then get it all put through the thicknesser. When they're all brought down to thickness, I can then clean up the other edge on the table saw. I want the cabinet to have mitered corners, so I set the saw up at 45 degrees. Now I can get the first cut made, then I set up a stop block so that I can get the sides the same length. Then I can do exactly the same for the top and the bottom. I want the inside face of the cabinet to have a bevel, so I'm going to set the fence to 30 degrees. This saw is unusual as the blade doesn't tilt, but the fence does. I can then stand to the side of the saw, run the boards through and get this angle cut. With all the cuts made, I can give all the pieces a sand down and then it's time to try and get this all glued together. I haven't got any mitre clamps big enough for this thick material, so I'm going to lay all the boards out and then use some tape. With the joints nicely lined up together, then I can put some masking tape along the seams. With them all taped up, I can then get it flipped over and now I can get some glue applied to the joints. Now I can just carefully get it all folded up into a box and get some more tape on that last joint. Now I just need to leave it to dry and stop messing around. When the glue's dried, I can get all the tape ripped off and look at reinforcing these corners. Because the boards are so chunky, the glue joint is probably strong enough, but I'm going to reinforce them with some dowels. So I mark out the centre point. Then I use my Triton machine to drill a couple of holes in each corner. I'm putting these holes in through the sides because later on I'm going to fill a shelf and use some fake looking dowels to hold it in place. You'll see what I mean. I get some glue into each of the holes and then I've got some 40mm dowels that I tap into place. I want this unit to have a shelf halfway up, so I get a bit of wood cut down to size. The shelf's not going to be as deep as the cabinet because of those bevels at the front. I get some offcuts of wood and sit the shelf on that just to help position it, and then I get a countersinking bit put in the drill. I get a couple of holes drilled through the cabinet halfway up and these will match the existing dowel holes at the top and the bottom. I can then drive a couple of screws in from either side to secure that shelf into place. Now I could have just used dowels to secure it, but this way is much easier. But to hide those ugly screw heads, I'm going to cut some plugs on the drill press. I only needed 4, so I could just pop those out with a screwdriver, and then I can get some glue in the holes and get these tapped down into place. When the glue's dried, I can come back with a pull saw, cut the dowels flush and those plugs. I can then give the whole of the cabinet a sand down. Now I can start on the legs. I'm going to use the same material as the cabinet, but it's a bit too chunky, so I'm just going to rip it down to about 20mm. I want the legs to be splayed out, so to match the bevel, I'm going to cut them down to a 30-degree angle. I'm making 2 sets of legs, and each set is made out of 3 pieces that go together a bit like this, or actually exactly like that. I want the legs to have a bit of a taper, so I just mark out where I want the taper to start and finish, draw a line, and then I can take them to the bandsaw to get them cut out. I had thought about making a jig so I could cut these consistently, but then I realised if I just did them on the bandsaw it'd probably take about 30 seconds. I cut them just off the line I'd drawn, and then I could get them in the vise, get a hand plane, and plane down to the line. To join the 3 bits together, I'm going to use dowels. So I've got this little self-centering doweling jig I'm going to use to drill a couple of holes into each leg. With all the holes drilled, I get some glue in, some dowels in, and then get them pushed together. Now, this was my first time trying to do legs like this, and everything didn't line up quite perfectly. As you can see here, everything's not quite level at the top. So after they dried, I tried to sort this out on the table saw. I ran them along the fence, cut the top flush, and then flipped it round, put them back through, and did the same to the feet. This way I'd know all 4 legs are the same height. I want to have a stretcher to join the 2 sets of legs together. This will also give me a way to attach it to the cabinet. So I drill some more holes with the countersinking bit and a couple of holes in the stretcher. Then I can get them glued and screwed together. I get the holes plugged in the same way, leaving them to dry, trim them flush and giving them a sand down. The bed is all just pine, and I didn't want this to just all be pine as well, so I'm going to stain the legs black, just for a bit of interest. When the ink's dry, I can look at getting these 2 parts joined together. I position the legs on the bottom of the cabinet, then I can get a couple of screws put through those holes I drilled into the bottom of it. I used a matte water-based varnish for the bed, so I used exactly the same to finish this. And that's it all done. Now I can sit in bed, reading my porn, and now I have somewhere to keep it. Night night all. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreons, and please subscribe for more videos.